we're going to go to tab 38, which is Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 1526 on local regulations on nonconforming and unsafe structures by Senator Avila, and you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. This bill allows owners of properties that intersect with the coastal construction control line to demolish their existing structures if they are non-conforming according to FEMA guidelines, have been deemed unsafe by the local building official, or have been ordered to be demolished by the local jurisdiction. Once these unsafe structures are demolished, the bill authorizes their replacement with new resilient structures that are to be built to current building code, FEMA standards, and local building codes. The bill has been worked on diligently with multiple stakeholders to reach common ground, and the following are currently exclusions in the bill. Structures individually listed in the National Register of Historical Places or Historic Places, single-family homes, and contributing buildings within historic districts that are listed in the National Register of Historic Places before January 1st, 2000. That is the bill, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Jones.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Avila. Yeah, as you know, we dealt with this last year because I represent Miami Beach, so I do have some questions just based off of reading the bill last night. Could you just explain the difference between the non-conforming structures and buildings that are deemed unsafe for people?
Senator Avila.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question, Senator Jones. So, an unsafe structure is, obviously the local jurisdiction and that local building official that is inspecting the structure. Given that jurisdiction, they're the ones that determine whether a structure is unsafe or not. Certainly in our area, we've certainly seen what derelict buildings, the consequences of having unsafe structures can be. So again, it's up to that local jurisdiction and their building officials to determine whether a building is in fact unsafe. And if that building is deemed unsafe and that building department or building official deems that this building is unsafe to the point where it should be demolished, then under this legislation, that property owner would be able to demolish that unsafe structure and build a more resilient structure.
Madam Chair?
Follow up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Avila, for that. As it pertains to, just for clarity, for those who might not know, can you give us some examples of the non-conforming issue or instances, if you have?
Follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question, Senator Jones. So that non-conforming structure definition, so to speak, it relates and it comes from that National Flood Insurance Program. So that's the reasoning for it. I mean, certainly we, the closer you are to the coast, especially in our area, the more likely it is that you're going to have a lot of flooding, and you're going to have a lot of, whether it's hurricanes or anything related to flooding in those areas. They're more prone to certainly have an effect on a lot of these structures, which make them non-conforming and make them, in a lot of cases, make them unsafe given the jurisdictions.
Follow up?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for that, Senator Avila. Going to the owners, could owners of some of these of the historic buildings, could they allow their properties become non-conforming in an effort to have them demolished?
Follow up? Yes, sir. Answer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question, Senator Jones. I don't think that a property owner would intentionally do that. I think we would all agree that once a property owner makes an investment in acquiring a property, they tend to they want to make sure that they are bringing in a return on their investment on that property as soon as possible, right? So I doubt that you'll have property owners intentionally doing something to harm their own property, because at the end of the day, it's up to that local building official to determine whether that building is unsafe, and it is up to that local jurisdiction to deem whether that building or that structure should be demolished.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good. Any other questions, members? Okay, Senator Osgood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, would you just explain for me, in the bill, it uses like the word non-conforming, and then it talks about being unsafe. So when I'm looking at those two words, it could be non-conforming to something like a city ordinance, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's unsafe or it threatens somebody's life. So could you explain to me, as it relates to this bill, non-conforming and then unsafe, and if they're one and the same or if they're not one and the same?
Senator Alvaro.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question. So, Senator, it goes back to, I guess, some of the points that I made with Senator Jones's questions. Unsafe, just to tackle that one first, unsafe is, again, it's up to that local jurisdiction and up to the local building official and that building department within that jurisdiction to determine whether a structure is unsafe. That is according to, what definitions they've set in terms of a structure that is unsafe. Obviously, whether it's, a crippling building that has chunks and pieces of it, falling, whether it's an entire staircase that has completely given out after, decades of use. Again, that is up to that local jurisdiction and what they deem as being unsafe or not, right? Again, it is up to that local jurisdiction once that building has been deemed unsafe, or if that building has been deemed unsafe, to make a determination whether that structure should be demolished. If they do make that decision and allow that property owner certainly to, when they make that decision or when they tell that property owner, hey, this building needs to be demolished, what this bill does is essentially it tells the property owner, or it allows the property owner to not be penalized and to certainly be able to build according to what is allowed under that jurisdiction's building code, as well as our Florida building code and our FEMA standards.
Follow up?
Thank you. And I went back and I'm looking, and I see where I'm seeing non-conforming. It's talking about structures that are being put back on these particular spots. So what you address unsafe, which I think is your intent in the bill, but I'm still dealing with
What line item are you on?
Okay,
Senator
I'm
Osgood?
on line 44, but I'm still dealing with this word non-conforming. So would you elaborate a little bit more on that word, non-conforming?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question, Senator. So the definitions, as it's stated in the bill, is a non-conforming structure means a structure that does not conform to the requirements for new construction issued by the National Flood Insurance Program. So as I mentioned to Senator Jones, that's where this is coming from, right? If let's say an insurance program is not able to insure a structure because it is non-conforming, that's not a structure that we would want people living in or coming in and out of, right? Because obviously if they're doing that, that's a cause for concern. That's a red flag.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions, members? Seeing no questions, we have several appearance forms. We have Daniel Seraldo with he wants to speak against, and you're with Miami Design Preservation League.
Yes, thank you, Senator and members of the committee. Daniel Seraldo here from Miami Beach, and happy Valentine's Day to everyone. I know I see all of our beautiful historic markers behind us, and I know many of our historic buildings and neighborhoods are celebrating today, and I'm honored to be here to speak on this bill. So the issue has been really kind of honed in on, and I think we all know that it's about this definition of non-conforming. And as was discussed, in the current bill, it says that anything that is not built to today's new construction, which means anything built before today, is automatically non-conforming. We know that the federal government, we know that the National Park Service, we know that local government, and even the state government allows for our historic buildings to be able to be renovated and restored without having to be elevated to the new construction level. And so we believe that the intent of the bill is to focus on unsafe structures ordered to be demolished. And so in the two of the three qualifying cases, we're good with that. It's that non-conforming that we're very concerned about. As an example, in Miami Beach, buildings like the Eden Rock Hotel, where my sister got married, would be considered under this language, non-conforming, and I heard them say unsafe. That is not acceptable to us to call our businesses, our hotels that spend millions of dollars in making sure they're safe to be under this bill as unsafe. So our ask in between now and when it gets to the floor is if we can continue working with all of you. We know the Florida Conservatives for Coastal Preservation have been emailing all of us. There's a lot of concern about the unintended consequences of the bill, and we want to make sure we address that because we cannot call these beautiful places unsafe just because they're not, in my town, a new building's got to start here. My grandma can't get up to it, but it's new construction, that's it. We got to allow our historic buildings, whether St. Augustine, Miami Beach, Palm Beach, Fort Myers, Pensacola, and all around, to be able to, restore and renovate and not be tagged as non-conforming. And I'll wrap up. I wanted to mention an example. The Deauville Hotel in North Beach was left very derelict, and there's press all over about that. And the city of Miami Beach even had to take them to court about it. They've been trying to sell it and resell it and redevelop it, and they have all the right to do that. But to make that the rule and not the exception would lead to a slippery slope, we think. We shouldn't encourage the labeling of these buildings as unsafe and allow the decline of demolition by neglect. Happy to answer any questions. I did want to, though, just say for the
Senator Jones, you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Very quickly, and thank you, Daniel, for coming up again this year, because I know we dialogued about this last year, and I know we haven't spoken this year. When you speak of the National Registry, how many buildings that you know of are on the National Registry?
Through the chair. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Senator. And that's a very important point. We've been told at these different committees that there's only 7 in Miami Beach. And we went back and looked, and there's actually 2,200 structures on the National Register of Historic Places federally designated as historic. And so we really want to keep working with the senator, the sponsor. We know in the House we're going to be working on that amendment too, to make sure we're not in violation of the National Preservation Act, certified local government minimum standards.
Follow up?
Yes, Madam Chair, and just my final question. And based off of, considering that the bill is significantly different than it was last year, and based off the email from last year compared to the emails this year, while some of the constituents in Miami Beach have concerns about it, they're saying the same thing that you're making mention of as it pertains to keep working on it. I guess my final question to you would be, based on the current language within the bill, of those 2,200 structures, do you have an idea, or does the advisory board have an idea of how many of those buildings will be affected based off of this particular legislation?
You're recognized.
Through the chair, thank you, Senator, for the question. Yes, and the work that's been done by all of you, and thank you to the sponsor, has minimized the impact of the bill. And so now there are only hundreds of federally designated historic structures at risk. But those hundreds include our hotel district, our resort district, where my grandparents went on their honeymoon, and my parents too. And so we want to make sure that those are not involved in this, and hopefully there is that continued dialogue. We know it's better than last year, but that doesn't mean that it's ready to go. It's arbitrary currently and maybe challenged if not amended.
Senator Osgood, you had a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Daniel, for coming. This is not my wheelhouse, so I'm trying to build my understanding. you talked about federally designated structures. What unintended consequences do you feel this bill with the amendments will have on those federally designated structures?
You're recognized.
Through the chair, thank you, Senator, for your question. Yes, the federally designated structures are designated either individually or as a district. Most of them are districts in our city because there are so many. And so this bill makes no mention of local preservation boards, as an example, which is certified local government is allowed to have local preservation boards. But in addition, with the nationally designated sites, it says that if you're on the coastal construction line, you're only exempt if you were on the National Register before January 1st, 2000. Okay, so what that means is that history stops there, and everything designated in our town after that, for example, the Faena District, which many of you know about, that the Collins Waterfront National Register District was designated in 2011. It's also locally protected. Under this bill, it's unsafe, non-conforming. There we go. So we just can't stand for that. Also, we have the Fontainebleau District as an example. The Fontainebleau was individually designated at one point, so that's exempt. Next door, the Eden Rock is locally designated, and so that is now non-conforming. So as you could see, the patchwork, the arbitrariness, the punitive nature of seeming to target certain places over others, even the idea of the coastal construction line, which doesn't go all the way around the state. So how could you say, oh, well, if you're on the coastal construction line, then you can't have preservation, but Key West is exempt because they don't have a CCL, and nor do many other places. So again, this needs more work. I know this is a quick meeting. We're not trying to take your time, but we hope to work with all of you and the sponsors to hone it in, to focus on unsafe structures ordered to be demolished, which we all agree, and even today, that's possible without this law.
Madam Chair?
Yes, follow up.
Thank you. So as I'm listening at you, we know that no bill is a perfect bill. We continue to work on them. So the way you're understanding this, if we approve this bill, those places that were designated after 2001 or what you just described, the Eden Rock, they would all have to be closed down?
You recognize, Daniel.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of that.
I said you just talked about the Eden Rock and different structures. So the way you're understanding this bill, if this bill passes, all of those places will have to be closed down.
Sorry, through the chair. Thank you, and thank you, Senator, for the question. That is a great question that we don't know. We don't know the answer. Obviously, if the state passes a bill saying the Eden Rock and all our hotels are unsafe, it could lead to unintended consequences being shut down. But more importantly, the federal government, through their grant programs and certified local governments, they give funding for disaster relief, for preservation. All of that could be a risk if the National Register is cut off at the year 2000, or if local control is preempted to such a degree as we think the current language allows.
Thank you.
Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Serraldo, great to see you again. Like Senator Jones, both Senator Jones and I represent the area of Miami Beach, and we are very concerned and understand that Miami Beach is a very unique area, very big on their preservation and also very big on resiliency. So I think we're trying to find a way to help, but not necessarily making exceptions. I mean, there is a huge focus now on recertification of buildings as a standard, especially after what happened at Champlain Towers. A lot of these historic buildings are around Champlain Towers, where that happened. And I'm sort of wondering where the mindset is. Do you feel that maybe historic buildings should conform to other safety standards?
You recognize.
Through the chair, thank you. And thank you, Senator, for your question and your constant communication. We really value that. Yes, that's a great question. We have a recertification process, whether you're historic or not, that starts at the 40-year certification. Unfortunately, Champlain was 39 years old, was not a historic building, and we know there were building code issues in the 80s, and that did have a horrible consequence. We actually believe that the recertification and the preservation and investment in our existing affordable housing and resorts are going to lead to safety, are going to lead to that resiliency that we need to keep our economy going and our people safe. And that is absolutely our priority. We know that a building collapse in our city, in Miami Beach, would be devastating not just for our economy, but for the state's tourism as well.
A follow-up question?
One more question, yes. Do you think that the preservation boards should supersede local authority and current guidelines?
You recognize.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Senator, for the question. Absolutely, they should not, and there's also been some misinformation that the boards are going rogue. These boards are all appointed by the elected officials. They have very stringent standards that follow the National Preservation Act requirements, and there are opportunities for property owner engagement throughout the process. So we think that having a focus on keeping buildings maintained and operating is a benefit to all of us. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's a Florida thing and probably an American thing. These buildings don't have voices. We are their voice, and we hope that you will all respect that and continue working to amend that, just that minor clarification, which will avoid unintended consequences.
Great, thank you. Okay, members, are we all good? Okay, thank you for your appearance. We have Lenny Juarez with the City of St. Augustine is waving in support. Lenny's waving in support. City of St. Augustine. Kim Duncans with the 1,000 Friends of Florida is waving against, and we have David Cullen with the Sierra Club is waving against, and we have Daphne Savelle with the City of Fort Lauderdale is waving against. Members, we are in debate. Any debate on the bill? Seeing no debate. Senator Jones.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Last year, I voted against this bill, and I know Senator Avila, who I just want to acknowledge. Thank you so much for working with the stakeholders in this and listening to Daniel's testimony again this year. I'm happy to see that you all are getting to a place to where it can be okay. I would today. I'm going to vote yes on it today with the understanding that we're going to be able to work together. I do have some questions, Senator Avila. I want to get with Daniel and some of the constituents in my district and just really get their concerns and see if I can bring those to you and see if there's a way that we can work together. And I also will work along with Senator Garcia because we do share Miami Beach together. I don't want the concerns that they have. I believe they are valid, and I think you also realize that they're valid. But I would love to work with it before it gets to the floor, if possible. So thank you for this time, Madam Chair.
Senator Osgood.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Avila. I voted no in the previous committee on this bill. I went and made an attempt to do as much research as I could and ask questions and listen. And as I'm thinking about this, I work at a church. We have some properties that are very, very old that we certainly want to preserve the historical aspect, but we also don't want to be sitting in church and the building fall in and people die and people get hurt. So as we balance the conversation about historic preservation in buildings and structures and many things with those buildings, you are allowed to grandfather them in. So in my mind, I'm trying to balance protecting history and keeping people safe and alive. And I think about my grandparents' house and how it still has fuse boxes, like you can't put a TV on the wall because it's so old, and just the different things that, could potentially be unsafe because they're grandfathered in. Certainly don't support just making a building because it's old unsafe, but do feel an obligation, whether it's an old building or a new building, to make sure that the structure and everything is where it's not going to harm people. So I was asking my questions. I'm going to change my vote in this committee because when I focus on the people aspect, whether the building is old or new, I'm not for pushing down all the old buildings, but I am for keeping people safe. So thank you for indulging me in my questions.
Thank you. Members, any other debate? Seeing no debate, Senator Avila, you're recognized to close on your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to clarify something. So I know that a 2,000 number was thrown out there by the previous speaker. in all of Miami-Dade County, which is larger than 15 states, right? You have 193 properties that are listed on the National Register, right? Of that, you have 7 that are listed in Miami Beach on the National Historic Register. You also have 4 National Register historic districts. So, I know that a big number was thrown out there. From what I'm seeing in terms of National Register, these are the numbers that I got. Now, I can tell you that the Miami Beach Historic Preservation Board has designated over 2,600 buildings or structures as historic. Now, I'm a big fan of history. I think we all appreciate history and we love it. Certainly serving in this body gives us a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation of history, but we also have to balance that with property rights, and we also have to balance that with safety. A lot of these structures back in the day, they were filled in with sand as part of the aggregate. So a lot of these structures, just by that very nature, kind of give you a pause for concern. And so this legislation is very, very, very tailored, very narrow. I'm trying to thread that needle between all of these 3 factors: safety, property rights, and historic preservation. And with that, I ask for your favorable support.
Great. Cindy, will you please call the roll on committee substitute for Senate Bill 1526?
Senator Baxley? Yes. Senator Book? Yes. Senator Boyd? Yes. Senator Broder? Senator Broxson? Senator Burgess? Yes. Senator Burton? Yes. Senator DeSigley? Yes. Senator Garcia? Yes. Senator Hooper? Yes. Senator Hudson? Yes. Senator Jones? Yes. Senator Osgood? Yes. Senator Rodriguez? Yes. Senator Rusan? Yes. Senator Simon? Senator Torres? Senator Yarborough? Vice Chair Perry?
Yes.
Chair Mayfield?
Yes, and by your vote, committee substitute for Senate Bill 1526 is reported favorably.